So I wanted to make this tutorial on how to create joints and assemble joints in Fusion 360. So I have two projects that I've been working on. I have a simple item here that is a tube, and I want to make this plug actually insert into the bottom of this tube and be able to move it up and down and display how it's actually going to function. I also have a hinge that I've previously created for a 3D printer, that enclosure that I had built, and the door on my 3D printer enclosure uses these hinges to open and close. And I just wanted to quickly go over how I assemble this in Fusion 360 and show how it actually will function and that it'll function properly. So to get into the basics part of creating components that will actually work with the joint function. So the first part of being able to assemble anything, you actually have to assemble components. So all I have right now are two bodies that I've created, and what I need to do is create these turn these bodies into components. So I'm going to right click, go to create components from bodies, and you'll see down here it created a new body within component 1. I'm going to right click on body 4, do the same thing, and it creates component 2. So my next step is I can now go to assemble and joint. You'll also see up here at the top there's a shortcut for joint. But I'm going to create a joint. Now I need to select the part of this component where I want my joint to be at. Since I want this plug to go right into the center of my tube, I need to select the exact center of my component. So I'm going to select the plug, and then I'm going to rotate so that I can see the bottom of the tube. I'm going to select the center of the tube, and it automatically moves the part over and shows me how it's going to function. So as you can see over here on the right for motion, you have different selections here. What I'm going to go over today is how to create a revolute and a slider axis. And for this part, all I need is a slider. So I'm going to make sure the slider was selected, which it already was. And I'm just going to hit OK because I don't need to do any alignment or offset, because I already selected the alignment by selecting the exact center of the tube and the plug. And they're already have been previously measured within my model to fit together. So I'm just going to hit OK. Now my next step is to make sure that I can actually move this up and down so that I can see within the window that it will move. And as you can see, the whole part moves together. The reason for that is because I need to ground one of these pieces, making it so that it will not move and the other piece will. So component 1 was the tube. I right click on the component, not the body, but the actual component, and I go to ground. And that will make this piece not be able to move anymore. So I left click and I can't move it. But if I left click the other component, it moves up and down. And as you can see, that when I sliding it up and down, it's actually going through the whole part. I don't want that. So I want to make sure that this is actually sized correctly and that these pieces are actually going to fit together without anything blocking it. So what I need to do that is go to Assemble, and I'm going to enable all contact, which will enable every piece of this assembly that if there's a part that touches another part, if there's physical contact, it's going to stop. So once I start moving it up, it makes contact with the bottom and it stops. So as an example, to further go into this, if this was off set at any part, or if my measurements were wrong, when I move this up, say it was offset by a couple millimeters, I would move this up and it would hit the edge and it would just stop right there, instead of going all the way up into the tube and then making contact with the outer brim that I created for this plug. And that's a very simple way to create an assembly using joints. I want to show you how to do that with this hinge. It's a little more complicated, a little more parts involved, but it's the same, pretty much the same scenario. So I already have previously created the component, so I don't have to worry about that, and I already grounded the left part of this hinge. So I can just go ahead and I can start creating my joints. So I'm going to create a joint. I move these pieces around, that's what this pop-up is about. So I'm just going to go ahead and capture the position. I'm going to select component 1, the part that I want to move, be able to be movable within the part. And I want this section of the hinge to line up with this bottom piece, and I need the center to be aligned. So I'm going to select, zoom in, make sure I actually select the center, and it moves it over. And as you can see, my motion is still set as a slider, which is not what I want. I want it to be a revolute. So I'm going to select revolute, and now it's going to move around the hinge the way that it's supposed to. If you look closely, the hinge is actually touching up here. I don't want it to touch exactly because I need some free movement when I actually put these pieces together. So I previously measured this gap here, and I know it's about 1 millimeter. So I'm going to offset the bottom, dragging down to 0.5 millimeters, and that gives me an exact gap between both top edges and the bottom edge. Everything else looks okay for what I want it to do. So I'm going to hit OK to finish that piece, and it should move around the correct axis. And as you can see, it's going all the way around, and I don't have the enable contact enabled yet, so I'm going to go ahead and enable that. And before I show you actually how this works, I'm going to put this pin into the hinge. So I want the bottom part of the pin to line up with the bottom part of the hinge. So I'm going to go to a Cymbal Joint, select the bottom part of the pin, then select the bottom part of the hinge, and it's going to insert it in there. Right now it's set to revolute, so I need that to be a slider because obviously the pin will slide into the two pieces of hinge to connect them together. And there it is. So I'm going to hit OK. Now I should be able to, since I enabled all contact, I should be able to move this hinge as a functioning hinge. So I'm going to grab this piece, and it should stop right when it touches that, and it does. And then if I look at the back part of this hinge, and I grab it and I turn it around, it should stop right when that edge hits this face. And it does. So it's a functioning, the faces are functioning. Now if I grab a hold of the pin, I should be able to pull it up and down. Pull it out, put it all the way back in, and it should stop. And it does, because it makes contact with the top. So I have a functioning hinge. Hope you liked my tutorial. Please hit like if you appreciate this tutorial, and consider subscribing if you would like to see further videos. Thank you.